cops tased me for being black in a white neighborhood. Then they realized I was their former chief. I was walking my daughter's dog through Oakmont Hills at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. 3 months retired, just moved to the suburbs to be closer to my grandkids. The neighborhood was quiet, expensive houses with manicured lawns, the kind of place where people notice when someone doesn't match their mental picture of who belongs there. I had the golden retriever on a leash, cleaning up after her like a responsible pet owner, when the patrol car rolled up beside me. 2 officers got out, young guys, mid-20s. The taller one had his hand near his weapon before he even spoke. Officer Martinez asked what I was doing in the neighborhood. I told him walking my daughter's dog. She lived 3 blocks over. He asked for ID. I reached for my wallet slowly, hands visible, and handed over my license. He stared at it too long, way too long, then asked if I had proof I lived here. I said my daughter lived here. I was visiting, and this seemed like an odd question for someone walking a golden retriever in broad daylight. That's when his partner, a shorter guy named Davis, told me to put my hands behind my back. I asked why. What law had I broken? Martinez said they'd gotten calls about someone suspicious matching my description. I didn't resist. I've seen too many situations like this go wrong. But I told them this was ridiculous, that they could call my daughter to verify everything. Davis said we'd sort it at the station. When I reached for my phone to call her myself, Martinez shouted I was going for something. 50,000 volts hit my body before I could explain. I went down hard, face in the grass, convulsing, while the dog barked frantically beside me. They cuffed me while I was still twitching, put me in the back of the patrol car. The dog ran loose, and I saw neighbors filming from their porches. At the station, they threw me in an interrogation room and disappeared for 2 hours. Nobody would tell me what I was charged with. My phone was gone. When I asked for my call, they said eventually. Through the door's small window, I watched officers walk past. Some would glance in, then quickly look away. Others would stop, stare hard, then rush off, whispering to someone. The station's energy felt wrong, panicked. Martinez returned with a sergeant I didn't recognize. The sergeant looked pale, sweaty, like he'd gotten terrible news. He told Martinez and Davis to wait outside, then sat across from me and just stared. I asked if I was being charged. He didn't answer, just pulled out his phone, scrolled, then looked up with wide eyes. Asked how long I'd lived in Oakmont Hills. 3 months, I said. Moved here after I retired. The word retirement hit him like a punch. He stood so fast his chair fell backward and left without a word. The whispers outside got louder. I heard someone say, "Are you absolutely sure?" Another voice responded, "It's him. Dear God, it's really him." The door opened. 3 people now. The sergeant, a captain, and the current chief. A woman named Patricia. Someone I'd trained 15 years ago when she was a rookie. Patricia saw me and all color drained from her face. She turned to Martinez and Davis in the hallway, said something I couldn't hear, but I watched Martinez's expression shift from confusion to absolute horror. Patricia came into the room, closed the door, and finally said what everyone had figured out, that I was Marcus Williams, that I'd been their police chief for 12 years before retiring 3 months ago, that Martinez and Davis had just tased and arrested their former boss for walking a dog while black. But what happened next showed me exactly how broken the system I'd spent decades trying to fix really was. The rest of the story is on my channel, or linked below. Patricia stands frozen in the doorway, her face a mask of professional composure that's rapidly crumbling. Behind her, Martinez looks like he might vomit on his polished shoes, while Davis stares at the floor, unable to meet my gaze. "Marcus," Patricia finally says, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't even begin to apologize for what's happened here. She stops, searching for words that don't exist. "This is inexcusable." I say nothing, just watch as the reality of the situation ripples through the station. The handcuffs are still digging into my wrists, my muscles still twitching from the taser's after effects. The golden retriever is gone, probably terrified and running loose in a neighborhood where she doesn't belong. "Get those cuffs off him immediately," Patricia orders, her voice finding its authority again. A sergeant rushes forward with keys, hands trembling so badly he can barely fit them into the lock. When the cuffs finally release, I rub my wrists slowly, methodically. Mr. Williams, Patricia says, "We need to get you checked out by medical. Those taser barbs can leave nasty wounds, and the current can cause muscle damage. I'll drive you myself, and then straight home." I look her directly in the eyes. "No." Patricia blinks, confused. "I'm sorry?" "Process me properly," I say, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. "Book me, fingerprint me, photograph me. I want the full procedure documented." "Marcus, please," she says, lowering her voice. "This was clearly a mistake. We can handle this differently. Like you'd handle it for any other black man walking a dog in Oakmont Hills?" I ask. The question hangs in the air like smoke. Martinez and Davis shift uncomfortably in the background. Patricia turns to them, her expression hardening. "You two, my office, now!" They scurry away like scolded children. Patricia turns back to me. "Marcus, I understand you're angry. You have every right to be. But please, let's not make this more what?" I interrupt. "More public? More embarrassing for the department? More indicative of the systemic problems I spent 12 years trying to fix?" The booking area has become unnaturally quiet. Every officer, every clerk, every person in custody is watching this unfold. Word travels fast in a police station. The former chief, arrested for walking a dog, tased for reaching for his phone. The front door bursts open, and Captain Johnson rushes in, still wearing his dinner jacket. Someone must have called him at home. He stops dead when he sees me standing there, handcuff marks visible on my wrists. "Chief Williams," he says, disbelief coloring his voice. "What the hell happened?" Before I can answer, my phone rings from somewhere in the property room. Patricia nods to a desk sergeant who retrieves it quickly. The screen shows my daughter's face, and I answer immediately. "Dad, where are you? Daisy came home without you. She's terrified and her leash is still attached. Are you okay?" I keep my voice calm, aware of every officer in the room listening to my words. "I'm at the police station, honey. There was a misunderstanding while I was walking Daisy. I'll explain everything later, but I'm fine." The lie tastes bitter on my tongue. I am not fine, but decades of police work taught me to compartmentalize, to handle one crisis at a time. "The station? What misunderstanding? Dad, what's going on?" "I'll call you back soon. Take care of Daisy. She's probably scared." I hang up before she can ask more questions. A sergeant approaches with a plastic bag containing my wallet, keys, and the dog treats I'd had in my pocket. His hands are still shaking, and he can't quite look me in the eye. "Sir, your belongings," he mumbles, placing the bag on the counter rather than handing it to me directly. I take my time checking each item, making a show show of it. I'd like a copy of the incident report before I leave, I say loudly enough for everyone to hear. Patricia's expression shifts from apologetic to panicked. Marcus, please, let me handle this internally. There's no need for formal documentation that would just embarrass everyone involved. The station has gone completely silent. Even the phones seem to have stopped ringing. Every eye is on us, every ear straining to hear my response. I gather my belongings slowly, pocketing each item with deliberate care. Then I look directly at Patricia, at the woman I trained, mentored, and eventually recommended as my replacement. The woman who dismantled many of my diversity initiatives within weeks of taking over. That's exactly the problem, I say quietly. How many other black men get walked out of here without documentation after being wrongfully detained? How many incidents get handled internally instead of being properly recorded and addressed? Patricia has no answer. None of them do. I walk toward the exit, my back straight despite the lingering pain from the taser. As I push open the door, I hear the station erupt into chaos behind me. Phones ringing, urgent whispers, orders being shouted. Outside, the night air feels cool against my face. I take a deep breath, trying to steady myself. For 12 years, I led that department believing I was making real change. Tonight showed me exactly how superficial that change had been. 3 months after my retirement, and already they're tasing black men for walking dogs in the wrong neighborhood. I pull out my phone to call my daughter. This isn't over, not by a long shot. I wake up to the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand. The digital clock reads 6:17 a.m., and my body still aches from yesterday's taser encounter. When I reach for my phone, my muscles protest with sharp pain that reminds me exactly what happened in Oakmont Hills. The screen shows 17 missed calls, 11 text messages, and a flood of news alerts. The first notification makes my stomach drop. Former police chief tased while walking dog in upscale neighborhood. So much for handling this quietly. I scroll through the messages, 3 from reporters I've known for years, 4 from former colleagues expressing shock and outrage, and 1 from my daughter that simply reads, "On my way over. Don't talk to anyone until I get there." The local news station is already running the story as their lead. I turn up the volume to hear the anchor's practiced concern. Williams, who served as chief for 12 years before retiring just 3 months ago, was reportedly tased by officers responding to a suspicious person call in Oakmont Hills. Sources say the officers failed to recognize their former boss. My doorbell rings just as I'm pouring my first cup of coffee. My daughter Amara stands on the porch, her expression a storm cloud of fury. "What the hell, Dad?" She pushes past me into the living room. "I had to find out from the morning news that my father was assaulted by his own officers? Why didn't you call me last night? I was going to tell you everything today. Didn't want you worrying." She notices my stiff movements as I set down my coffee mug. "Are you hurt? Did you see a doctor? We should document your injuries." "I'm fine." I lie. The muscle spasms haven't completely subsided, and the spot where the taser barbs punctured my skin still burns. "You're not fine." She pulls out her phone. "I'm calling our lawyer." Before I can respond, my phone rings again. Unknown number. "Marcus Williams," I answer, my voice still carrying the authority of someone who commanded a police force for over a decade. "Chief Williams, this is Richard Denton from the Police Officers Association." His voice has that practiced smoothness of someone about to propose a deal. "I wanted to reach out personally about yesterday's unfortunate incident." "Unfortunate incident?" I repeat, making eye contact with Amara. "Is that what we're calling it when officers profile, assault, and tase an unarmed black man for walking his daughter's dog?" Denton clears his throat. "Obviously, what happened was unacceptable. Officers Martinez and Davis have been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation." "Administrative leave with pay, I assume?" "Standard procedure, as you know." He pauses. "We'd like to resolve this situation quickly and quietly. The department is prepared to offer a formal apology and compensation for any medical expenses or inconvenience." Amara watches my face darken and mouths, "What?" "Mr. Denton," I say slowly, "I spent 12 years trying to reform that department. I implemented racial bias training, community outreach programs, and accountability measures. 3 months after I retire, your officers tase me for being black in the wrong neighborhood, and now you want to buy my silence? Chief, we just want to handle this reasonably. I'm filing a formal complaint with the Civilian Oversight Board today. I want body camera footage preserved and made public. I want a full investigation, not a cover-up. Sir, please reconsider. This kind of publicity doesn't help anyone. It helps every black person who's been stopped, questioned, or assaulted for existing in the wrong place. Goodbye, Mr. Denton." I hang up as my email pings with a notification. 3 different news organizations have filed formal requests for the body camera footage from last night. The department's response is already attached. Materials unavailable during ongoing internal investigation. Amara reads over my shoulder. "They're burying it." "Not for long," I say, forwarding the emails to a contact at the Civilian Oversight Board. I know exactly how this works from both sides. My phone rings again. The mayor this time. I put it on speaker. "Marcus," Mayor Harrington says, his voice tight with concern. "I just heard what happened. This is a complete disaster." "For whom, exactly?" I ask. "For the department? For the city's reputation? Or for the black man who was tased for walking a dog?" "For everyone," he says quickly. "Listen, I've known you for 15 years. You know I respect you tremendously. But this situation could damage the relationship between the police and our communities for years." "That relationship is already damaged," I reply. "What happened to me happens to black citizens every day without cameras or connections to protect them." "I understand that, but do you? Because your first concern seems to be liability, not justice." The mayor sighs. "What do you want, Marcus?" "I want the truth documented. I want accountability. I want the reforms I implemented to be reinstated and strengthened." After I hang up, Amara looks at me with newfound respect. "You're really doing this." "I have to," I tell her. "If they can tase me, their former chief, imagine what happens to kids without my connections." My doorbell rings again. This time it's a woman I recognize from local Black Lives Matter protests. "Mr. Williams, I'm Janelle Roberts from Community Action Network. We're organizing a police reform rally next week, and we'd be honored if you'd consider speaking." Before I can answer, my phone buzzes with a text from Patricia. "Need to talk. Martinez has 8 previous civilian complaints for excessive force, all buried before reaching your desk. Davis has similar pattern. Internal affairs investigator coming to see you today." I look from the text to Janelle standing on my porch, then to my daughter watching expectantly. "Come in," I tell Janelle. "We have a lot to talk about." 2 hours later, a detective from Internal Affairs Affairs sits in my living room, reviewing my statement. His hands shake slightly as he takes notes. Sir, I've reviewed the preliminary reports and... He hesitates, looking genuinely disturbed. This should never have happened. But it did happen, I say firmly. And it happens to people who don't have my platform every single day. As he leaves, I find an unmarked envelope that's been slipped under my door. Inside is Officer Davis's complete disciplinary file, showing a clear pattern of racial profiling that somehow never resulted in serious consequences. The attached note reads simply, "Not all of us are like them. Some of us remember what you tried to build." I look at the evidence spread across my coffee table. The complaint forms, the documentation of my injuries, the news reports, the leaked files. 3 months ago, I thought my work was done. Now I realize it's just beginning. The body camera footage drops like a bomb on Tuesday morning. Someone inside the department leaked it to Channel 7, and by noon, every major network is running clips on repeat. The unedited 6-minute video shows exactly what happened. Me walking Daisy, officers approaching with hands already on their weapons, Martinez's aggressive questioning, Davis moving behind me, and then the moment I reach for my phone, followed by the flash of the taser and my body crumpling to the ground. There's no ambiguity, no gray area, just a 62-year-old black man being tased for walking a dog in a neighborhood where someone thought he didn't belong. My phone hasn't stopped ringing since the footage aired. I finally turn it off after the 47th call, most from reporters, but some from activists, politicians, and former colleagues all wanting a statement. Amara sits beside me on the couch, her laptop open to social media, where the video has already been viewed over 2 million times. "They can't spin this," she says, scrolling through comments. "They tried, but the footage speaks for itself." I nod, watching a press conference where Officer Martinez stands at a podium, his union representative hovering protectively at his side. "I was following established protocols for suspicious person calls," Martinez insists, his voice steady but his eyes darting nervously. "The subject was uncooperative and made a sudden movement toward his waistband. We are trained to respond to potential threats." "The subject was your former boss," a reporter shouts from the crowd. "How did you not recognize Chief Williams?" Martinez's face tightens. "In the moment, we were responding to a potential threat situation. It was dark, and it was 6 p.m., another reporter interrupts. The body cam shows clear daylight. The union rep steps forward, cutting off further questions. Behind them, the department's brass stands in a grim line, faces impassive. Patricia is notably absent. I turn off the television, unable to watch anymore. They're sticking to the script. "Dad," Amara says, looking up from her laptop. "The police commission meeting is tonight. Are you still planning to speak?" "Yes." My voice is firm despite the knot in my stomach. Someone has to tell the truth about what's happening in that department. The commission meeting room is packed beyond capacity. News cameras line the back wall, and every seat is filled with community members, activists, and officers in uniform. I recognize most of the faces on both sides, people I've worked with and people I've tried to build bridges with during my tenure. When my name is called to speak, a hush falls over the room. I walk slowly to the podium, aware of every eye tracking my movement. The 5 commissioners sit behind their elevated desk, expressions carefully neutral. "My name is Marcus Williams." I begin, my voice stronger than I expected. 3 months ago, I retired after serving 12 years as chief of this department. Last week, I was tased by officers Martinez and Davis while walking my daughter's dog in Oakmont Hills. I pause, looking directly at the row of uniformed officers sitting stone-faced in the front row. What happened to me was not an isolated incident. It was not a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was the predictable result of a culture that views black bodies as inherently suspicious, inherently threatening. The room is utterly silent now, even the usual shuffling and whispers gone. During my tenure as chief, I implemented comprehensive racial bias training. I created community oversight mechanisms. I established protocols for de-escalation. Within weeks of my retirement, many of these initiatives were quietly dismantled or defunded. A muscle twitches in Commissioner Grayson's jaw, but he says nothing. I've reviewed the department's stop data from the past 3 months. I continue, holding up a folder of documents. 87% of all suspicious person stops involved minorities, despite our city being only 31% non-white. Officers Martinez and Davis have conducted 43 such stops between them since I retired. All but 6 targeted black or Hispanic individuals. Murmurs ripple through the audience. I see several officers shift uncomfortably in their seats. The problem is not just a few bad officers. The problem is a system that enables and protects those officers, that trains them to see threats where none exist, and that fails to hold them accountable when they abuse their power. As I finish speaking, Patricia walks in through the side door. Her eyes meet mine briefly before she takes the podium after I step away. "Chief Williams is right," she says, her voice barely audible at first. The room leans forward collectively to hear her. "Our protocols enabled this discrimination. Our culture permitted it. And our leadership, my leadership, failed to prevent it." The admission sends shockwaves through the room. Officers stare at her in disbelief, while community members whisper urgently to one another. I take full responsibility for what happened to former Chief Williams, and for the pattern of biased policing that the data clearly shows has continued under my watch. After the meeting, I'm surrounded by reporters in the hallway when I spot Martinez and Davis huddled with a man in an expensive suit. Their attorney, no doubt. He catches me looking and whispers something to them before approaching. "Chief Williams," he says smoothly, "my clients feel they're being scapegoated for following department protocols. They're prepared to share information about how these stops were encouraged by command staff if it comes to that. Are they prepared to explain why they tased an unarmed man for reaching for his phone?" I ask. The attorney's smile doesn't reach his eyes. "We all want the same thing here, a fair resolution." "No," I correct him. "We don't want the same thing. I want accountability. I want change." The protests begin the next day. First 100 people outside police headquarters, then 500, then over 1,000 by the weekend. Signs bearing my image and the words, "If they'll tase a chief, what will they do to me?" appear throughout the city. Neighboring departments issue statements distancing themselves from our city's policing practices. The FBI Civil Rights Division announces a preliminary investigation into pattern or practice violations. On Monday morning, Mayor Harrington calls me personally. "Marcus, I'm creating a special task force on police reform. I want you to lead it." "Another task force?" I ask, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Another committee that makes recommendations that get filed away and forgotten?" "This would be different," he insists. "Real power, real change." I think about about all the reforms I implemented that were dismantled within weeks of my departure. All the training programs defunded. All the oversight mechanisms weakened. No, I tell him firmly. Reform failed. We need transformation. What does that mean? He asks, frustration evident in his voice. It means new leadership, new accountability, new culture. It means consequences for officers who abuse their power. It means civilian oversight with actual authority. That's not realistic, the mayor argues. The union would never. Then we've identified the problem. I interrupt. When public safety takes a backseat to protecting officers who tase people for walking dogs, the system isn't just broken, it's corrupt. After I hang up, I stare at the bruises on my wrists that are finally starting to fade. For 12 years, I believed I was changing the department from within. Now I realize that real change might only be possible from the outside. The path forward is clear now, even if it's not the one I expected to walk. Sometimes you have to lose faith in a system before you can truly see how to fix it. The grand jury takes 2 weeks to deliberate. I spend those 14 days alternating between press interviews, meetings with community activists, and long walks with Daisy through my neighborhood, this time with my phone visibly in hand and a small crowd of supporters trailing behind me. The symbolism isn't lost on anyone. When the indictment comes down, I'm sitting in my living room with Amara. The district attorney calls personally. Martinez is being charged with federal civil rights violations, she tells me, her voice carefully neutral. Davis has accepted a plea deal in exchange for testimony about departmental practices. I exhale slowly. What's the plea arrangement? Probation, community service, permanent surrender of his law enforcement certification. He'll never wear a badge again. After I hang up, Amara studies my face. Is it enough? It's a start, I say, though we both know it's more than what usually happens in these cases. Most victims of police misconduct never see any charges filed at all. The next morning, Patricia calls a press conference. I watch from home as she steps up to the podium, her posture rigid with the weight of what she's about to do. Effective immediately, I am resigning as chief of police, she announces, her voice steady despite the visible shock rippling through the assembled reporters. Under my leadership, this department failed to uphold the standards of fair and equal treatment that every citizen deserves. The incident involving former Chief Williams was not an isolated failure, but a symptom of systemic problems I allowed to persist. She pauses, looking directly into the cameras. The reforms that Chief Williams implemented during his tenure were dismantled too quickly after his retirement, including crucial bias training and accountability measures. That was my mistake, and I take full responsibility. My phone immediately lights up with calls, but I ignore them all. Patricia's admission is both vindication and a fresh wound confirmation that the work I dedicated my career to was abandoned the moment I walked out the door. 2 days later, the city council holds an emergency session. I attend as an observer, sitting quietly in the back row while they debate the path forward. The vote, when it comes, is unanimous. The establishment of a civilian oversight board with real authority, including subpoena power, disciplinary review, and the ability to recommend termination of officers who violate department policies. Councilwoman Rivera approaches me after the vote. We'd like you to consult on the new community-centered policing model we're developing. Your expertise would be invaluable. I consider her offer carefully. I'll help design it, but implementation has to come from within. The department needs to own these changes, not see them as imposed from outside. End quote. The changes come rapidly after that. Body cameras are now required to remain activated during all civilian encounters, with automatic disciplinary action for officers who disable them. Martinez's previous complaints are reopened, revealing a clear pattern of racial profiling that had been buried under bureaucratic paperwork. The city attorney calls me one evening in late April. We're settling with 5 previous victims who experienced similar profiling incidents, she explains. Your case opened the floodgates. People are coming forward who never thought they'd be believed. Good, I say simply. Each settlement represents not just compensation, but acknowledgement, official recognition that what happened to these people was wrong. When the new chief is appointed in May, a woman named Reyes with a strong background in community policing, her mandate is explicit: implement sweeping cultural changes throughout the department. During her swearing-in ceremony, she acknowledges me publicly, promising to build on the foundation I laid years ago. This time, she says, looking directly at me, we won't let it erode. 3 months after the incident, I walk through Oakmont Hills again, Daisy trotting happily beside me, the same route, the same time of day. But this time, when a patrol car drives slowly past, the officer inside simply waves and continues on his way. No suspicious glances, no demands for identification, just a neighbor acknowledging another neighbor. My phone rings as I'm turning back toward home. It's Patricia. Marcus, she says, her voice hesitant. I was hoping we could meet. I need to talk about everything that happened, the mistakes I made. I pause on the sidewalk, watching Daisy sniff at a nearby hydrant. Coffee tomorrow at Riverside Cafe? Thank you, she says, relief evident in her voice. I'll be there. The following week, Martinez is sentenced. No jail time. I never expected any but 3 years of probation, mandatory bias training, and 500 hours of community service working with youth in predominantly black neighborhoods. It's not justice, exactly, but it's accountability, which is rarer than it should be. The Oakmont Hills Neighborhood Association contacts me about a community cookout they're planning. We'd like to invite officers to attend, the organizer explains. A chance for residents and police to meet properly, without suspicion or fear. Would you consider saying a few words? I agree immediately. When the day arrives, I stand before a mixed crowd of neighbors and uniformed officers, many looking uncomfortable in this informal setting. Real safety doesn't come from treating neighbors as suspects, I tell them. It comes from knowing each other, from building trust that works both ways. I notice Davis standing at the edge of the gathering, out of uniform, watching intently. Our eyes meet briefly before he looks away. He won't wear a badge again, but he's here, listening. Maybe that's its own kind of progress. Later, as the sun sets over the neighborhood that once saw me tased for existing in the wrong place, I watch children playing with police officers in a game of impromptu soccer. Daisy runs excitedly between them, chasing the ball and drawing laughs from everyone. Was it worth it? Amara asks, appearing beside me with a plate of food. Going public? Pushing for all these changes? I think about the Community Oversight Board, reviewing all suspicious person stops now, about the reopened complaints and the settled cases, about the officers learning to see residents as people first, not potential threats. It shouldn't have taken tasing a former police chief to make these changes happen, I tell her. But yes, it was worth it. Change never comes easily. She nods, watching the game continue as twilight settles over Oakmont Hills. Next time you walk the dog, though, she says with a small smile, maybe I'll come with you. No need, I tell her, scratching Daisy behind the ears. This neighborhood belongs to all of us now.